Alrighty then, and we are back, or rather, I am back. And before I get started on anything, I apologize for the lighting conditions outside. It's kind of meh, and the sun's going in and out. So the autocorrect on my POS camera here is the auto lighting correct rather is going to go fade in and out. So just kind of bear with that. You'll also notice that I'm not doing the microphone thing today. I recorded that video the other day just basically as a test for the mic to see what would happen with it. And the audio quality actually recorded really nicely. What I didn't like was the angle of the camera and how, I don't know, I didn't like the camera angle on my phone and its lighting conditions. My little piece of shit camera here on this laptop is actually doing a better job. And for whatever reason, I can't get a wired mic to work with, a headset rather, to work with my laptop. So until I get a USB mic and a better camera, this is probably going to be the setup. Lighting conditions, as you can see, are changing left and right. Okay, not here for any of that. What we are here to do is to finish what we started in April. And that is that batch that we made at 4417 of naturally extracted tobacco concentrate. Today I'm going to take you through the process, finally, and I do apologize that it's taken this long. I knew that I wanted to do this July 4th, but since approximately June 30th, I've had my death of cold after cold after cold. I work in a petri dish. I am a police officer at a university, and anything that anybody catches, I eventually get, and it just was pure stupid chance that I caught a cold, was getting over it, wasn't completely over it, caught another one, it compounded. And even in my last video, you could still hear it in my voice. Right now, I've still got a little bit of it in my voice, but I'm well enough to do this. So, yeah. What we are going to do, after I'm done blabbing up here, we're going to go ahead and cut straight down at the table, and I'm going to start taking you through the process. And just like I described in my original DIY NET video, and apologize for the throat, in the last video, basically you take this slurry here, and you end up straining it. And what do you need? You obviously need your steeping mix of yuck. You need some sort of rough straining device. For me, I get a dedicated French press. One of these guys has got the screen filters on there. And for the batch I'm doing, you do want a fairly large one. And I didn't bring them to the table here for the camera, so I apologize. Coffee filters. Everyone knows what coffee filters are. And then as the final step, I get these marine filters. I've got 5 micron and 2 micron. The process for the coffee filters and the micron filters is exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is actually show you the process of me straining this with the French press, and then I'm going to show you me beginning the process with one of the coffee filters. After that, I'm going to go ahead and cut the camera because I'm not going to bore you to death with watching this stuff drip through. And I'm not going to show you the identical process with the micron filters. Again, it's just a matter of pouring the stuff in there and letting it drip through. Anybody can do that. So, yeah, it shouldn't be too terribly long of a video, but if it is and I yap like I normally do, I apologize. Yeah, that's basically all you need. You got your stuff that's been sitting in a closet. Hopefully every day you've been doing that, or maybe every couple days, or at least once a week you've been doing this. You're going to be straining it down to, with my process, 2 microns. For the life of me, I can't get this stuff to strain down to 1 micron or even half a micron. So if you're putting in the comments below, why don't you strain it down to 0.5 micron? I can't do it. I don't have the equipment to push the propylene glycol, and even without the tobacco in it, this propylene glycol is pretty thick stuff compared to water. And I just can't get it to go through these ultra micron filters. Maybe the paper ones would work better, but I haven't had a whole lot of luck with those either, simply because they tend to tear on me because they're so fine. The ones I'm using, these are actually marine filters. These are made for aquariums. Of course, get clean ones. And these are meant to filter out particulate matter out of water for your little swimming friends. 5 micron is where I go, and then down to 2. Because this guy here, this beast, with its screen mesh, is approximately 35 microns, maybe a little less than that. It might be down to 25 or 30. Whatever the case is, it's pretty rough. Coffee filters, your everyday paper coffee filters, and I'll show you those as I'm setting it up. Those are typically 15 to 20 microns, probably closer to the 20 side. And what I'm doing with the French press is getting rid of all the sludge. And it filters effectively down to 30-ish microns. And then I'm pouring that through coffee filters. And that's getting it down to 20-ish, maybe 18 microns. At that point, it's good enough to be forced through a 5-micron filter. And eventually, 2 microns. 2 microns is as fine as I can get. And 1 micron, I pour the stuff in there and it just sits there like it's a bowl. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. 2 microns is going to have to be good enough for me. Anyway, enough of that. We're going to go ahead and cut down below after the intro and all that jazz. I'm not going to be back up here until after we're done, and I'll show you the final product. So yeah, stick around, and I'll go ahead and show you how this is done. So check it out. Alrighty then, and we are back. If my voice is a little distant, apologize. I had to back the camera up quite a bit, because this is kind of a bigger French press that I've got here. Yeah, and before we get started on this, whatever French press or whatever that you get for this process, make sure it's dedicated specifically to filtering tobacco and nothing else. Don't ever use this for coffee again, and I don't recommend taking one that has been previously used for coffee and doing it for this. I would buy one specifically for this purpose, and only for this purpose. That's just being safe and not yucky. No drop cloth on the table today, simply because I don't want to get anything potentially wet. Apologize if the camera bumps around as I'm moving stuff. So, first part of the process is going to be pretty easy. You got your French press, and you got your concentrate. Remember, we got 2 bottles of this goop. So basically, I'm going to pull the top of this out, pour the stuff in, and use this plunger to squish all the stuff out. Then, through the spout, I'm going to pour it into another vessel. What I have been doing is just pouring it back into one of these after I rinse it out with really hot water. So what you're going to see me do is pour the contents of both of these into here and start pressing it. And as it's sitting there kind of settling down, I'm going to go ahead and rinse one of these out and use that to store the concentrate. And then I'm going to strain into a couple of other household type things that you'll see once I get to that process. Pardon me for a second, a little vape break. Yeah, much better. Anyway, so let's get on with this part. Pull the plunger out, and this is the part that you kind of need to be careful with, because propylene glycol, for those who don't know, is kind of slick, gooey, oily type of stuff. Just be careful with whatever type of blockage material you've got. And I do this like a beer. Tilt it over to the side and just let everything kind of fall in there. Now you eventually want to get everything out of here. And something I didn't bring on camera that I should have is some sort of little spoon. So, hang on a second. I'm going to pause, grab a spoon, and do all this stuff. So I'll be right back. Alrighty then, and with video editing magic, I am back. And butter knife works perfectly fine. Just to get all that stuff out of there, because what you're going to want to do is squeeze all the propylene glycol out of this goo. And all the essential oils are still floating around in the PG. Some of the PG, though, is trapped in the tobacco at this point. If you can't get every last little scrap of it out of there, you know, whatever. Get as much of it as you can. And if I go off camera with this, I apologize, because I'm really not paying attention to what's on the camera as I'm doing this. I'm taking a look at what's in the jar. And yeah, as you can see, I got just about everything out of there. And for right now, that's good enough for government work. Move on to the next one. repeat the process with that. And this is why I got a big French press. And this is going to take some straining, some pressure, some work, whatever you want to call it, to get all this to strain properly through the first step. When you're getting ready to do this, set aside some time, because this is time consuming. It's going to be a little more time consuming for me because I'm doing it on camera. But you get as much of this stuff as you can, get a little drippage here and there, that's fine. And this is where you're at. Got this big French press about half full of this goop, and I'm going to pause again so I can clean this stuff up and get it out of the way as we continue, so hang on for a second. Alrighty then, a little bit of a cleaner space here and continuing on. And for those of you who have ever used a French press, just treat this like it's a coffee French press. I'm going to make sure everything's on here good and tight. Don't want this thing falling apart on me as I'm beginning to use it. And apparently, this thing was backed off a little bit. There we go. Tighten that bolt down just a little. Perfect. And the way a French press works is you got this screen. All the goop is going to be on this side and trapped over here, which would be at the bottom end of the jug here. And the plunger is not going to go all the way down. I imagine in here it's going to go down about that far. And the goal is to put as much pressure on this as you can without shattering the glass, without bending this, to squeeze juice out of this. And as you're doing that, pouring it off of the top. So to that end, I have cleaned and dried these. One may be enough, but I've got them both ready to go. And this is where I'm eventually going to store the stuff anyway, so yeah. So, make sure the lid's on good and tight, and then just take that plunger, and any type of little bits of tobacco that are on the side, you're going to notice those are going to stay where they are. Now, you're going to notice this takes a little bit of pressure to get it done right. And that plunger is going to want to pop back up. So, and I rearranged the cup, or the handle on this, so that the spout is on the side. That way, as I'm plunging with one hand, I could pour with the other easily. If you like, put it back the other way. Matter of fact, I'll show that to you because a lot of these don't have a movable cup. So, try to keep a little bit of pressure on it. And just pour. And this stuff is thick and dark. I think one will be enough. Now, I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but this last little bit of sludge that's coming through, or liquid that's coming through, does have some particulate matter in it. Oh, another thing that is essential during this process, paper towel. Now, that's not vape ready. I mean, look at that. That is some thick stuff, and it's gnarly looking. You are nowhere near done. And this is nowhere near done because I'm still getting more stuff out of it. So, let's press a little bit more. Oop, camera. Sorry about that. And if you remember, we took that 500 milliliters and we started going to town with it. And with the tobacco and everything, both of these jars were just about full. You're going to get very little more than this. Now, I am going to pause in just a minute, but what you're going to do at this point is pull the plunger up a little bit and maybe take that butter knife again and stir that tobacco up. You do that once or twice, you might get a little bit more in this jar. So I'm not going to bore you to death with that particular process. Let me go ahead and do that after I pause the video, and then I'll come back and show you what I've got at the end of the day. Hang on. Alrighty, and we are back after a little bit of stirring, a little bit more poking, prodding, and whatnot, and at the end of the day I got about an extra ounce of liquid out of it. But hey, I mean, an ounce, that's about 30 mils of concentrate. If you do 5 to 1 or 4 to 1, you're looking at making an extra 150 mils of liquid out of that extra ounce that you just strained out of there. Yeah, so at this point, and the reason I'm coming back before I continue on, is to show you that you've got this dried up mess, well, not completely dry, but this mess of tobacco. You're done with this at this point. Now, a couple schools of thought of what you can do with this. If you've got a garden, if you do mulching and whatnot, you can actually throw this in your garden, just dig up a hole somewhere in the garden and put it in there. It's a natural product. It's tobacco. Propylene glycol breaks down completely and very quickly in the environment, and the tobacco itself will help to add to mulch and whatnot. Be careful doing that, though, if that's the way you want to go, because remember, the nicotine did not go into here. It's all still in there. So, if you've got a garden that your pets play in or whatnot, bury the stuff, and it'll be perfectly fine, because the nicotine will actually dispersed throughout the soil and whatnot. I mean, the little bit of nicotine that's in this is perfectly fine for that purpose. We're not burying 100,000 cigars. We're burying one. And you're probably only going to do this once or twice a year or something like that. So that's perfectly fine and acceptable. Another school of thought, throw it in your garbage disposal, grind it up. It's perfectly safe for the environment. 3, toss it in the trash. I mean, you're done with this stuff. Which is probably what I'm going to do. I don't have a proper garden, per se. I don't have anything that I really want to dig up or put a hole in my ground, in the ground in my yard to do this with. So I'm just going to toss this stuff away. It is biodegradable, and it's perfectly safe for the environment, but it might not be safe for a squirrel or whatever that comes by and decides to nibble on this because they're interested. So, yeah, just a couple of ideas about that. So let me deal with this goop, and I'm sorry again about all the cutting and yada 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 with the camera. Just the nature of what we're doing here. Let me get rid of this goop and this, and then we'll continue on with filtering with the first process, and we should be about wrapped up after that, so just kind of stand by for me. Alrighty then, I'm back. I dealt with all that dead tobacco, yada 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 yada. Cleaned up the table a little bit, and we're going to move on to the straining process. Before we carry on, you have the little black lump back there. That's my cat. He's decided to have a drink right now. If he decides to move on to the red bowl over here and starts crunching, I apologize. He's not the cleanest or neatest eater. And if I cough here and there, forgive me. Still got a little bit of the plague. So, a couple things we're going to do. We're going to use just a regular old wire strainer like this and a measuring cup. That's it. Both of these, make sure you wash very well with just hot water. No soapy water, just nice hot water. And you'll notice that this little basket that I've got is wet. That's for a purpose. Got some unfiltered, or unbleached rather, coffee filters here. These things are great. We'll see how many of these we need. I'm just going to do one at a time. And the reason I left this basket a little bit wet is because when I throw this in there, it kind of sticks in. I like it. And my cat has decided to move on. If you hear his nails clicking around, I apologize. The first part of this process, very, very straightforward. Take this, pour it into that, and it gets caught in here. Just be careful when you do it. Remember, this is a little thicker than water, so it's going to pour a little differently. Just watch it as you're pouring in. Make sure that coffee filter doesn't fold in on itself. Let it settle here and there. And even as big as that batch was with that huge 770 cigar that I used, I'm able to pour everything into one filter. And you'll notice it's just sticking in there. First part of the process is done, and now we wait. And yeah, let me show you what we got here. If you're going to do this, do it very carefully. It's barely dripping. So let that sit there. And wait. So, obviously I'm not going to have the camera running the entire time that this is going on. So, let me tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to let the stuff strain through this coffee filter. I'm going to clean this, pour it back in here, the strained mess, and then I'm going to run it through 2 coffee filters at the same time. Hopefully in doing all of this, I've got it strained down to about 15 microns. And then where we're going to go from there, and that's why I've got multiple filters, is I'm going to take this 5 micron filter, I'm going to clip it to a smaller measuring cup with these little chip clips. You know, you just roll, and I don't want to do it with this because it's a little wet right now. Roll it over the edge and clip it around the edge. I use 3 of them, cup it into or shape it into a cup. And unfortunately, this part's a slow process, I mean, if you will, and I'm not going to bore you by showing the process to you. It's literally me pouring something over a filter, just like I did here. Pour a little bit of it, and as I did with this filter, don't let it get all the way to the top. Let it get about 2/3, 3/4 full. Stop. If you need to wait a few minutes, do so. When you're using the 5 micron filter, I mean, this process here is going to take about 15 or 20 minutes, and you see how slowly it's draining. Using the 5 micron filter, you're looking at about a 40-minute wait. Ditto for the 2 micron filter. You're looking at about an hour and a half straining to do it properly with the micron filters. If you're comfortable vaping your stuff at about 20 microns, 20 to 25 is probably what you're getting with one filter. I don't know, these paper filters are pretty good. About 20 microns. If you're comfortable with 20 micron vape, you could do what I'm doing right now and let it do that forever. And yeah, me personally, I want my coils to last as long as possible. I don't want them to burn out, because if I were to vape a liquid based on this concentrate right now, it would gunk up my coils like hella quick. I mean, in less than a day. And also, the stuff that's gunking up this filter right now, the reason it's straining so slow, isn't just the viscosity of the propylene glycol. It's the particulate matter that is in this. I mean, and you can see it on camera. The little gritty-looking things, that's little pieces of the leaf from the tobacco that are in there. And in fact, let's see, get a couple more drops out of there. Why not? And while I'm talking, I'll let it drip. You don't want that stuff on your coils. And even if you dilute this stuff down to 4 to 1, 5 to 1, which might end up being the ratio with this, the strength of this liquid, it's going to gunk up your coils, and it's going to do it very quickly, and it'll burn your coils out. You don't want to do that. That's a lot of work, especially if you're using this in, say, a sub-ohm tank that does not have rebuildable coil. So anyway, I'm going to stop that, cut this part of the video, and then after this is done, I am going to, off-camera, strain through that, and then through the 2 micron filter, and then I'll come back with the final product. So just stand by for a while, and I'll be back soon. Alrighty then, we are back. Okay, filtration process is completed. I ran that goop through, as you saw, the single coffee filter. Got all that into a jar, cleaned everything out, ran it through 2 filters at the same time, 2 coffee filters. And then I ran it through the 5 micron filter in a similar manner with the little clips that I showed you, rather than the basket. That's the nice thing about those filters. You don't need something structurally holding the filter up. They pretty well hold up on their own. And then did the same thing with the 2 micron filter. A couple things about it. When I ran it through, and it went, you can see the clock, it went a little bit quicker than I thought it did. Running it through the coffee filters, through the 1 and then through the 2, took a total of less than 30 minutes, like 25 minutes, not bad. Running it through the 5 micron filter only took about 20 minutes. I was surprised. So the coffee filters did a pretty good job cleaning out the bigger chunks of shit that were in the concentrate. And then running it through the 2 micron filter took about 30-35 minutes. So at the end of all of that, ended up with that pretty black looking stuff. This is a 16-ounce jar, and so roughly, I don't know, 490 mils, something like that, all the way up to the top. I've got 480 mils, so I've got probably, I'm guessing, 420 mils. I probably should have measured that, but yeah, thereabouts. So we started this with 500 milliliters of propylene glycol, and we ended up with about 420. So, yeah, you're going to lose some. You're just going to lose some inherent to the process. Had I used something like an aero filter, and for those don't know, it's a coffee press, similar in concept to a French press, where you actually use basically a manual air piston to push everything through the filter. I might have been able to coax another 10, 20 mils out of it, and that's it. I mean, that tobacco, when I emptied it out of the press, was pretty dry. And had I not filtered it as much, or as thoroughly as I did, I probably would have ended up with a little bit more liquid, but I want a cleaner liquid rather than a little bit more. So all things being said, expect to lose roughly 20% of the liquid that you put in. I didn't lose quite that this time because I was just patient. Anyway, coffee filters. When you run it through the first one, you're going to see a bunch of gunk on that filter. I mean, it's going to have little gritty stuff on there. Then you run it through the double filters, and the goal of all this is it runs through pretty quick because you already got most of the shit. And then take the filters out and look at them. The top filter is going to have a lot less gritty stuff than that first filter did. And the bottom filter should have a little bit of gritty stuff. That tells you that you're filtering more stuff out. I had junk in the 5 and 2 mil micron filters. And the way I do these, and I get those big marine filters. I cut them into sections like you saw. And I run it through, just like you saw with the other filter. I just pour it in there and let gravity do its job. Once that's done, you can reuse those filters. Take that filter, turn it over in the sink so the water's running through it the opposite direction that the concentrate did, and just run it under very, very hot water for 2 or 3 minutes. Hang it up in your garage on a drying rack or something like that, and you can use that probably half a dozen times. And each marine sock that I buy that is like $3, I can cut about 3 of those filters out of. So, yeah, I get a lot of uses out of those. Other than that, not a whole lot to say. I mean, this thing is filtered out, and this thing went 1 day short of 18 weeks. So, yeah, this is some good concentrate. Now, a little bit of a spoiler alert here. A number of weeks back, while I was still fighting the crud and my voice is all shot and I sounded like Mick from Rocky, I did take a syringe into the steeping compound and pulled some of it out, filtered it, and made my own juice out of it. I let it steep for a couple of days, and this is at like week 12, and it was pretty good and strong, a lot stronger than the 8-week batch that I did on camera last time. I did that again less than a week ago, and it's not any stronger than the 12-week steep. So I would say 12, 13 weeks, boom, that's as strong as this liquid's going to get, and it ends up being nice and dark. And most of that coloration that you see there, that is from the Maduro filter, the Maduro wrapper that's on top of that cigar. I mean, and get a good cigar. I mean, this thing was rated 95 in Cigar Aficionado, so it's going to produce a better liquid than a cheap gas station, or, for the guys in the UK, petrol station cigar. And the batch that I made here a week ago is sitting in here. I did it a week ago because when you do mix a final concentrate, when you take this stuff and you mix it, and I'd say do it at about a 4-to-1, 20%, or 5-to-1, roughly 16.5% concentration. When you do that with your nicotine base, let it sit for 2 or 3 days because it's not steeping. Liquid manufacturers say we're steeping the liquid. No, you're not. You're allowing it to homogenize. That's all you're doing. All the steeping is already done. The steeping was done when I had the leaves, the tobacco leaf inside of the propylene glycol. That's the actual steeping. That's where everything gets leached out. What you're doing when you mix the final product, there are no chemical changes happening. Everything is just kind of homogenizing. It's just getting thoroughly mixed. And even if you do a shake and vape, where you just put the stuff in there and you shake the ever-living crap out of it, it's still not completely homogenized for about 24 to 48 hours. I'd say let it sit for 48 to 72 hours. I did 72, and I ended up with, running a little lower in there. In my To-Go Mini, I did a 20% concentration, and it's just really nice. One of the reasons I do like to filter as much as I do is that I do rebuild. And I want my coils to last a little bit longer. I don't want to have to rebuild my coils every 24 or 48 hours. If I hadn't filtered this as much as I did, if I didn't filter this down beyond the coffee filter stage, where it was at 20 microns, what would happen is I'd get a really nice vape, and then my coils would taste like shit by the end of the day. I'd have all kinds of burnt crap on them. So do yourself a favor, do go through the time and filter these if you're a rebuilder, or especially if you're not. If you use something like a sub-ohm tank, you're going to have to pop a new coil in there every day or two. And that's not good. As it is, this is a naturally extracted tobacco. The most I get out of a coil before I have to, dry burn and re-wick is about 4 days, 4 or 5 days. So, it's not going to be like your vape shop liquids that you put in that you can get a week or so or two out of a coil. Not going to happen with a naturally extracted tobacco. It's just going to fuck up your coils really quick. So just keep that in mind. But you see the process, you see what we did. Sorry for shaking the camera there. And you see the end result. This is a concentrate. Do not vape this stuff. Do not vape this directly. Do not vape this shit by itself. It will be a rather unpleasant experience. Dilute it. Like I said, the heaviest I would go is about 25%, 3-to-1 concentration. 3 parts of your nicotine base, whatever PG-VG ratio and nicotine that you want, and then 1 part of the concentrate. I do 4-to-1, 80% or 20% concentrate, and it gives me a really nice strong vape. And I would say probably don't do any less than 5-to-1. That's about 16%. Because if you do say 6-to-1, you're going down into like the 12-13% range, and it starts getting a little weak sauce. So 4-to-1, 5-to-1, I think that's where the money is. And just keep in mind as you're doing this, get a DIY calculator and make sure your nicotine base has enough nicotine in it to compensate for the huge 20% of this that you're going to put in. Let's say you get you do a 5-to-1 concentration with 6 milligram strength base. At the end of the day, what you're going to get is a 5 milligram concentration final product. So get one of those calculators out, do the math on that. And yeah, this is primarily propylene glycol. This stuff will keep forever. It's naturally, or inherently, nothing natural really about propylene glycol. It doesn't exist in nature by itself. It's inherently antimicrobial. It's safe to vape. I mean, as we know, PG, VG, it's in all kinds of foods and medicines, and we've been using it for, many, many, many years. So yeah, put it in a shelf, put it on a shelf in a dark area like your closet, just so that the sun doesn't come in there and start oxidizing this. If you're concerned about this with the clear bottles, wrap it in some masking tape or something like that to keep the sunlight from getting in there. But I've had really good luck with just keeping it in a jar like that, and it vapes great. Anyway, that's enough of this stuff. See my previous video for some of the things I've got coming down the pipeline. I've got a couple ideas I'm hashing out. Still fighting the very, very tail end of this cold, so I might take a few more days before I start thinking about what it is I'm going to do. Yeah, anyway, whatever you got to vape, whatever liquid you vape, whether it's a naturally extracted tobacco like this or gas station liquid, as long as it's something that you like and it keeps you off the stinkies, whatever you have to vape, whether it be something like this or a cigar-like, do what you got to do. Vape safe, it's a better alternative than smoking, really. Take a look at the links below. I mean, if you look at my last video, you'll see that really good things have happened with vaping lately. And that we got some good news from the FDA. I'm not going to get into that right here. Take a look at the video and a couple of links that I put below in that video. And yeah, support vaping, support the legislation bills that we have going on. HR 1136 is one of them, to really push vaping forward and repeal some of the ridiculous restrictions that the deeming regulations have put out. Contact your representatives and do what you got to do. Okay, that's me off the soapbox. So yeah, I'm done. This liquid turned out really well. I was really impressed with it. And I think from now on I'm going to do a 12 to 13 week steep. No sense in going any longer than 18 weeks unless you were just sick as a dog like I was. And you end up with a really, really nice product as long as you start with a really nice cigar or pipe tobacco. It'll work fine either way. Anyway, that's enough of that. So whatever you got to do, man. Do it. Stay off those stinkies and vape on. And as always, thanks for swinging by. Like, share, subscribe. Links for all that stuff is down below. And if you think someone else can get a kick out of this video, hey, send it on to them, and I'm game. All right? And if you have any ideas for future videos, for stuff that I can afford to do, remember, I don't have stuff pushed in, donated to me. More than happy to do that. Okay? So, yeah. Vape on, vape strong. I'll see you next time.